Hey guys, welcome back to Inclusion RX. Special guest today, Meredith Fruit. Meredith, how are you?
Doing good. How are you?
I am awesome. So, for those of you that don't know Meredith, she is a badass games athlete, which I guess is how I met you somehow, and co-owner of the Tactic Method. Is that what you call
Yeah.
it? Tactic
Yeah.
Nutrition,
Tactics. Yep.
helping people get their nutritional life together, which is always good. Need you in my house slapping me on the hand when I go to the fridge today.
Yeah.
It was one of those days. I was eating everything in front of me. Um, but as usual, we're going to be talking about inclusion in the boxes. And Meredith's one of the smartest people I know, certainly smarter than me. So let's just jump in. So first of all, before we get started, where's your kitty? Where's the cat?
Okay. So I actually think she's down in the gym with Alex. She likes to go down there while we work out. She gets a kick out of that. So I think she's down there. She was on top of the cabinet until recently. So I don't know. She's mad at me.
Yeah,
She thinks.
Bean is on this show, like on all my shows. Anytime I'm in front of this microphone, he's in here right now. He's by my foot. I'm surprised he's not
Oh,
up on the table looking at you and putting his tail on my face. But
yeah, she'd be here if Alex wasn't doing something more entertaining.
well, I want to just kind of start. You had sent me some talking points. We were talking about inclusion, and the very first thing you put was start by being not inclusive. And I was like, okay, I'm not really sure I know what that means.
Yeah. So it's kind of like you don't need to, when I think about gym owners and just people, especially right now, trying to be, more anti-racist, more inclusive, like, I think you have to first kind of stop and, um, think about what am I doing that might come across as being not inclusive? Like just, little subconscious things that aren't exactly the most welcoming to new or potential members, and like stop doing those things. So that's really just a way to say increase awareness over your current behavior, and kind of modify as needed. So, it kind of comes from the top with gym owners. Like, I mean, like I've been to tons and tons of gyms. I'm sure you have too. Every gym's got a different vibe, and a lot of time that comes from the owner, and it comes down from the top, and it comes through the coaching staff. And if the owner is very welcoming, very inclusive, very inviting, the coaches tend to be that way and the members tend to be that way. But I've also been to gyms where that's not the case. And, it becomes cliquey, it becomes difficult to get in the door. And I always think about like, what would that feel like as a new or potential member? And like that invisible barrier to entry goes up, even for people that can afford to walk in the gym and pay a membership. If they walk in, it doesn't feel like, these are my people, or these are people who want me here. Like that's an issue.
Can you give me a couple examples? Like I always struggle. This is kind of a weird moment for me usually because I'm just the old bald white guy. Like I kind of feel welcome everywhere I go. Like I kind of make this joke. Like I know we talk about white privilege and whatever, and some people think it doesn't exist, and some people think it does. And I can tell you, at least through my experience, like anywhere I go, people are like, "Yeah, come on in. You're a middle-aged white guy. You probably have money. We'd love to have you in here." Like it's like I always feel like I'm welcomed. Like give me some
Yeah.
examples of maybe this being not inclusive.
Um, Probably like when you walk into a gym, and like I've walked into gyms, I know plenty of people who have, and just no one talks to them. They stay in their little group, whatever they're doing. The drop-in walks in and they just stand there with their bag, like kind of looking around, waiting for someone to help them. There's not usually a front desk in CrossFit gyms, and like it's not necessarily members like jobs to be the welcoming committee or be like the front desk person, but if a coach isn't making a move, or like someone's not there to greet them, like, the member that's been at the gym for 5 years, like, guess what? That's not your job. And you should want to do that. Like the gym that I used to go to in North Carolina and I managed for a period of time, it's called CrossFit RDU. It's probably like the most inclusive place that I've ever been. And the crazy thing is like, it's in Raleigh. It's in a very conservative area. Like it's a very conservative group of people. But you walk, like if a new person walked in, they would just get swarmed by members. And part of that is because like the owner is that way. And he would start every class, like, there'd be a class of 10 or 20 people just staying there in a circle. And he'd be like, all right, you member, name everybody in the class. And if you couldn't name everybody in the class, everybody had to do like 10 burpees for each name you didn't know. So it's a pretty good like motivator to, like, as soon as someone walks in, you don't recognize them. It's like, hey, are you in my class? Awesome. What's your name? Like, what do you do? Like, it just gets people in the habit of introducing themselves, if like for no other reason than they don't want to do burpees. But like, you do that long enough and there becomes like a general interest in other people starts to develop.
God, I would be hated because I am so bad at names, like so bad. They'd be people doing burpees 24/7 if I were in one of these classes. Is this
Yeah.
I mean, you said it starts from the top. I mean, is this like a deliberate action by like specifically by that owner, or are they going to members and saying, "Hey, this is going to be our method moving forward," or is it just, do you think just kind of their outgoing personality over time starts to kind of leak into the culture?
Yeah, I think it's got to be like whatever's at your core, like whatever's in your heart. Like most effective leaders lead by example, and they don't lead by being like, look, like this is our policy, do it. And then like, but if you as the owner have your headphones in when you're training and don't even look up from what you're doing when people walk in, like, what do you think your members and coaches are going to do? They're going to do exactly what you're doing. And all of a sudden you've got a gym full of snobs who like don't give a shit about anybody who walks in the door, because all they care about is what they're doing that day. Which is fine. Like if that's the gym vibe that you want, like go for it. But you're not going to get people in the door that are going to be interested in sticking around. And like, you just have to be okay with that.
Well, you were a coach in this gym. Like, was the owner holding like team meetings with the other coaches and kind of walking them through this process, or not?
Not really. But most of the coaches there had been coaches for a long time. At this gym, like we were very well, like the culture was ingrained in us as members first. And then like the owner is just a guy who like he's very charismatic. You look up to him. Like he's just somebody who you want to like emulate in life. And so it was very easy to be that coach. It was very easy to be a member of that gym and feel good about what you're doing, because there's this guy who owns it. He's very successful. He's very fit. He's a super happy guy. So why wouldn't you want to be like him? It was easy.
One thing you had mentioned to me earlier was paying attention to the small details, or at least being sensitive to those small details. And, I'm imagining, this guy's a gym owner. If it's the most inclusive gym that you've been a part of, or one of the most, particularly in like a really conservative area, he was probably that way. Like, what are some of those small details that were kind of his sticking points to drive this?
Like honestly, the music was a big one. I think I've been to so many gyms where you walk in and you're like, what are you playing? Like, how can you be playing this music? And it's kind of like I've joked about it in the past, but I'm like, you walk into a gym that's full of white people and they're listening to the most like raunchy gangster rap that you've ever heard in your life. And I'm like, I've always been a little bit sensitive to that. I've become more sensitive to it in the past couple of months. But it's like, how do you not like, how's that an okay thing? Or how can you not be sensitive to that? Because, like that's fine. Play that music. What is a Black person going to feel like when they walk in and they see, like they hear words that are coming out of the speakers, and they just see people that are cool with listening to that music. So the music was a big one. Other details, he was very, very picky about keeping like politics and religion out of the gym. Just debates, like he wouldn't entertain debates around election time. Just tried to keep it as nonpartisan as possible, which I always respected, because I know I'm a pretty progressive, pretty liberal person, and like you're not always going to run into people like that in North Carolina. So it's like you want to make the gym feel safe, and as soon as you allow like politics and debate to invade that space, it starts to feel less safe. So that was kind of those were really his two big ones that I can remember.
Yeah, that's a real art, I think, for gym owners. Like, you mentioned, politics and religion. I was thinking on the religion front when you're talking about this, hard music. We listen to a lot of, my gym will play the same thing, and there would be times I'm like, if there's someone in here that's like super religious, I'm not sure they're going to hear the F bomb every other word. And to
Yeah.
your point, if you have an African American, are they going to hear the N word coming out of this with nothing but white people in the room? Like it kind of spreads across all things. I remember when I was training at CrossFit Mentality, we had Scott would had Spotify, but he didn't have the paid version. I don't know if he's too cheap for it. I'm not calling Scott Panchak cheap, but he wasn't paying for it. And so we had the commercial version, right? Well, they also couldn't control what was coming on. It wasn't a playlist. And
Yeah.
occasionally a song would come on and I would laugh my ass off watching him sprint across the gym to change the channel or put
Yeah.
something else on, because that was the way he was wired. Like he didn't want to offend anyone.
Yeah.
And so there is an art to like picking the right music that, will allow you to be kind of fired up for a workout, but also, not offend people on multiple fronts.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
yeah. Even though I prefer that music for whatever that's worth. One of the other things you mentioned was putting yourself in the shoes of marginalized members. So I was really kind of interested in that. Like, I understand the concept of putting myself in others' shoes, but
Yeah.
what did you mean by marginalize?
So like marginalized people in society, they're kind of people that exist on the fringe for whatever reason. Like maybe it's maybe it's their race, maybe it's how they identify like sexually. I like technically I'm a like marginalized member, even though like when we're talking minorities in society, like a white gay girl is probably the easiest minority to like digest as far as like sexual identity kind of thing. So I don't like, it's not like I feel particularly marginalized ever. But there are trans people who are in CrossFit, and something as simple as like, I've got a friend here in Calgary and they're trans and they're really interested in joining the gym that I'm at now. But unfortunately the gym that I'm at now doesn't have gender neutral bathrooms. And as silly as that sounds, they don't want to have to pick male or female. Like it makes a difference if it's like, look, here's a bathroom. It's got a toilet, a shower, you close the door and you like anybody can go in there and use it. Like that, like little detail matters to some people and it'll keep them in and out of gym. And it's like, it's easy enough to consider if you're doing like a new gym build out, like, hey, don't build like locker room style bathrooms that are gender specific, because now like you've got this, even though it's a very small demographic of people, they're not going to come to your gym. Like they're just not, unless they can come and not use the bathrooms. So that's one that's probably a little more unique. And then like the more common ones would be like considering like the race issue that we talked about with the music. The religion issue is another one. Not that people who are religious are particularly marginalized in modern society, but again, like you're making assumptions about people's preferences when you decide to, play certain types of music or hang certain flags. Like I've literally been into a CrossFit gym that had a Confederate flag up, and I was like that's it's like it was like 2016. I'm like, how is this passable? Like, how is this something that someone's like, yeah, this is a good idea. I feel good about hanging this flag in my facility. And maybe that's just somebody who doesn't care. Like they know where they are and they're cool with that. And it's like, yep, that's a flag that's going up. And if you don't like it, you can get out. But me, like if I was opening a gym, I would be considering kind of all of these things to make it as welcoming and as inclusive as I could make it. And things that are outside of my control are outside of my control. But like I can't control the members. If I have an asshole member, like I'll try to kind of like push them out slowly, but it's hard sometimes.
Well, I want to come back to that because I think that's a really interesting topic. But on this topic of marginalized, I think it's hard for a lot of people like myself, straight white male, right? Those are uncomfortable conversations often. And I think of our gyms, and I don't mean this in an insulting way, but a lot of our CrossFit gyms are just run by meatheads. We just like to work out,
Yeah.
that's so, we start talking about topics of sexuality and religion and race, and it becomes very, very, it's an uncomfortable topic that maybe they're not prepared to do, as they're running a new gym. Now, some of the things that should
Yeah.
be obvious, like Confederate flags and things like that, you would think would just be a no brainer. But even so, like if you could give advice to a gym owner to start broaching these topics, like what's maybe the easiest way for them to do that?
If you have like longstanding members who fit into those like categories of people, like maybe just ask them. Like all you have to do, you don't have to ask them for specific advice, but just ask them about their experience in your gym, ask them about their experience in other gyms, and just kind of ask like open-ended questions, and see where that goes. Like, you don't have to have a specific agenda when you talk to your members about these things. Just kind of like get a feel for what their experience is in life. And maybe that's all, like, maybe that's all people need, is to just like stop and listen for 5 or 10 minutes to people talk who are very different than them.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, as I've been doing these recordings, like I'm learning as I go. And, I thought at my age I knew everything. Apparently I don't. I know it's shocking. uh, Somebody said to me last night, we were talking on this topic of sexuality, and they said, about assumptions. And I'm like, well, what are some of the assumptions? They're like that people call the barbells men's bars and women's bars.
Mhm.
And I had never thought about that. And I'm
Yeah,
like it wouldn't even cross my mind that would
yeah,
be, a weird moment for someone, or even an insulting moment for them, when in reality it's a 45-pound bar and a 35-pound bar for those of
yeah.
us in the States. Those of you in Canada, I know it's,
20,
different.
20 kilo and 15, but
Yeah.
yeah. And
You'll
I
never
think
teach me.
no. I think I maybe have posted about that before. If I haven't, I've thought about it, but it's like, yeah, I mean, that's like, this is a 15-kilo bar. That's a 20. Like, a female can use either one, just like a male can use either one. And like, kind of a, not like a funny example, the gym that I go to, they host like some athletic teams, like a youth hockey program. And the guy who runs that program is a super great guy, but he's from Red Deer, Alberta, which is very, very rural, very conservative area. And again, like, he's a white guy. He doesn't think about these things. But they ran out of men's bars on the hockey side of the gym. And instead of just having these like 13-year-old boys use a women's bar, because there's 6 of them over there, they sent them over to my side, like the class side of the gym, to get the men's bars. So all these kids could use like 45-pound bars for
Right.
absolutely no other reason than he's like, no, these are boys. They use boys bars. So like, I get it. It's a super hard like mentality to break, but yeah, I don't find that particularly offensive. I'm just like, it's closed-minded.
Well, yeah, it's just like, yeah, I can see where it's not offensive, but it, like, now that I'm thinking about it, now it's kind of the learning aspect, I guess, is my point. Now I'm going, well, do we have men's and women's RXs, or do you just have two different RX weights? Like, I think there's a lot for all of us to learn there around, how we should be addressing this to make everyone feel comfortable. And there's plenty of us that it doesn't make us uncomfortable. Like, it doesn't make me uncomfortable to hear men's bar and women's bar, but it also doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
Like, and for the record, I'm perfectly happy using the 35-pound bar. I'd be ecstatic to do that most
Yeah.
days.
I've seen like games level athletes, like guys, just because it's not specified in the equipment requirements, when it's beneficial to them, they will use a 35-pound barbell because it's easier in your hands.
Yeah,
So
smaller. I
yeah,
love that.
smart.
Like, every time I've used one, I'm like, this is great. Like, why, why,
Yeah,
why don't they make the men's bar smaller on my grip?
yeah,
But, well, so kind of last topic, you brought it up though, but I think it's a really interesting one, as gyms are trying to, focus on inclusion and make people feel comfortable. We've all seen that member that's the jerk, like the one that
yeah.
comes in and blows us up and refuses to, comply isn't the right word. They're just not nice. Maybe, they're not kind. Like, how do you address that as a gym owner?
Um, I've seen it play out like a few times just because I've been in the affiliate world since 2012. But if someone's a cancer to your community, and they don't fall in line with what you want from your members, maybe they're stirring up trouble, or, whatever these people do. They do all kinds of things. Maybe they're just a jerk. You kind of have to think like, hey, how's this going to play out if I let this person be a part of my facility long term? Like, what does this look like in a year? What does it look like in 2 years? And if the answer is like, it looks bad and I'm potentially going to lose other members because of it, you just got to get them out. Or like sit them down and have a conversation first. I think it always, like, people deserve to be talked to. They deserve a conversation. But if behavior doesn't change after that, like, I've seen members get kicked out of gyms. I've seen that happen. And it's usually for the best, because it sort of nips that sort of cancerous growth in the bud, instead of just letting it spread and letting animosity grow for whatever reason. So I would get them out. But I also understand when gym owners are, they see people as dollar signs. So the idea of like, hey, you can keep your $200 a month and leave, like that's a hard pill to swallow, I think. But big picture, long term.
Yeah, I get that. But I also think, to your point of big picture, like gym owners have to be thinking about how many more could I be attracting if I didn't have this, negative energy in the gym, or if maybe setting aside kind of the jerk member, like if I took a moment and said, hey, if I could increase inclusion in whatever bucket would help, how much could I grow my gym? Like I was talking to one of the adaptive athletes, and like every city has a VA in it. Like if you
Hmm.
could train one of your coaches as an example to be really good at working with adaptive athletes, and then you got in your car and drove down to the VA and invited them in, how many people
Yeah.
could you add? And I realize that's harder for a gym owner than coaching a bunch of 20-year-olds that are fully able,
Yeah.
but it's also 25 new paying members. And in the
Yeah.
era of COVID, that's pretty good, you
Yeah. It's
know?
not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad at all, and you think, you just think kind of across the board of all these things we've mentioned, whether it's, race, religion, sexual orientation, whatever, if it's as simple as saying, hey, I'm just not going to play offensive music, and it adds 5 people, you just added $1,000 to your bottom line because you're not going to play the, whatever words coming out of the song. And I
Yeah.
think that's really all we're kind of talking about here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
and occasionally you got to kick people out. That happens too.
Yeah.
So,
It's necessary. It's part of the business.
yeah. All right. Well, Meredith, I appreciate you being on. I think it's been really, really helpful. So thank you for your time.
Yeah. You're welcome.
And we'll definitely do this again soon. For everyone watching, thanks for joining, and we will see you next week.